Hello, everybody. Thank you so much for watching another What's on Repeat. Yes, What's on Repeat. It's not stuck in my head. That was the old version of the show. What's on Repeat. I am one of your co-hosts, Brian. We're just going to get straight into it. My other co-host, Joshua Kirk. Joshua, how are you feeling?
Oh yeah, I'm doing well. How
That's
are you
good.
doing?
That's good. I'm doing good. I'm doing good. Life, pandemic life is still happening, and we're just getting
Oh
through
yeah,
it.
and also can't believe it. Like tomorrow is the election, so
Yes,
yeah,
we're
things are
shooting
crazy.
it. Yes, so obviously, hopefully by the time this is out, it either will be election day or maybe the day after. So please, hopefully all of you voted if you are old enough. And yes, What's on Repeat? It's a music show for music lovers by music lovers. We talk about albums we loved. We talk about singles we're looking forward to, or singles we like from upcoming albums, and then artists we want to hear from. So we're just gonna get straight into it because I feel like at this point, hopefully you guys have watched other ones. I keep looking at myself. I need to look at the camera. I'm not used to doing this again on my computer. So I'm going to get into my list really quick. I will say this, though. This is a very interesting list. Obviously, Joshua and I kind of know each other's list going into it, but this is a list of two artists or two albums that kind of assume we're going to be good. Two albums I was actually surprised with, and two albums that are easily skyrocketed to the top of my favorite albums of the year. So we're going to start with two albums that I knew I was going to enjoy. So the first album, we didn't have to wait freaking 5 years for Robin Pecknold to come back, and that is Shore by Fleet Foxes. This is a very interesting album. It is clearly not as expansive and like all over the place as like Crack Up is or Helplessness Blues. However, I still think it's stripped down. Fleetwood. I was about to say Fleetwood Mac for some reason. Fleet Foxes in a way. But it's just what you know of him, but just so well. We were talking about Anthony. I love how he said this is his damn, like Kendrick Lamar, where it's like he's still doing what he does best, but he's doing it more simplified and in a different way. And the songwriting's still really good, and I think some of the experimentation he does on it's really interesting, and it's a very mellow record considering the story behind it about how he almost died in like a tidal wave or I believe or something like that. He almost got swept away. So it's kind of him expressing just to live life, and it's just a gorgeous record. Yes,
Yeah,
you're gonna say something?
oh yeah, it is funny. Like the more simplified approach is kind of the reason why I didn't really care for this record that much
Mhm.
myself. I mean, I say it's probably their weakest album, even though I will say it is a slightly more focused record than Crack Up. Like, I don't know. I just think the older stuff is better. Just
No,
me.
and I do agree. I don't think it's necessarily as great as their last two records. But I think, like you were saying, it's a weird divide of like it's either we're used to Fleet Foxes being this kind of like this grand
Oh
sort of
man,
indie
I
folk,
know.
but like you were saying, like it.
And
I
I
will
and
say
I
it. Yes.
and I really wanted to like kind of really wanted to see them live when they got back on tour. Then of course, COVID put a stop to all that.
We're gonna have to
Unfortunately.
see Fleet Foxes then because I think they would probably do a killer show live. But no, I
Oh
agree
my
with
god.
you on that. But yeah, sure, Fleet Foxes. Another album, which is something that Joshua and I have been leading up to for this album to come out with, and that is Ultra Mono by Idols.
Oh yeah.
Honestly, I think the only thing I can say is Josh and I have literally said everything about what we were excited for this record or this band leading up to it. So really, I'm just gonna keep it with it's in your face. The production and the way it's mixed and mastered is so great. I love War as an intro. Reigns, in my opinion, besides some of the singles, I think Reigns is probably my favorite song. I just love that
Oh
funky
yeah.
groove, and then like the it's
Oh my
so
god.
menacing. It's great.
It's so good. Damn.
Yeah, it's good. It reminded me a lot of like Grounds, where it's like Grounds is very like funky, but then like the drum comes in and it's like haunting and menacing. It's really dope.
Some of the noise on the record is provided by saxophone. Like you could hear on
Okay,
Rain.
then yeah, that makes
It's like
sense.
it's like a baritone saxophone with like huge reverb on it.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. But yeah, definitely great. I'm gonna leave the surprises till after because I feel like that is actually more exciting to learn about. But the two albums that have easily skyrocketed to the top of my list, it upsets me that Joshua didn't share the same feelings for this, but I do feel like it is kind of a certain group that I get certain things about. Knuckle Puck 2020. I know Joshua and I had a conversation about this, and I'm just glad that he gave him a shot. Like, at the end of the day, you don't like everything, right? But in my opinion, this is not like Jeff Rosenstock or Pup. Like, this is not that.
Or Spanish love songs.
Or Spanish love songs. It's more, Knuckle Puck is like a Blink 182. Like, it's that kind of pop punk. Which, here's the thing. I love Blink 182. And this album just screams it is so punchy. They literally made a new guitar pedal because the guitars on this are so crispy. Just so Sidechain is such a good song. I love Into the Blue, all the singles from the moment this album starts. It is just pop punk hit after another, and just the guitars are great. I love the harmonies. I get it. This is not everyone's cup of tea, but for that sort of pop punk I love, I still have been listening to this album. Yeah. It's so catchy and infectious.
Yeah, it's definitely similar to how we had a conversation about Bright Eyes, how you weren't really a big fan of it, but it's still one of my absolute favorites of the year, IMO.
Yeah, no, and it is, it is what it is. Now, a record that I was expecting to be good, and it's one of those albums that I still am listening to parts of it, and it's sitting with me a certain way, and I can't explain how I have been into this record, but it's Lament by Touche Amore. I love Stage 4. I think that was their record that I think a lot of people got into with them, because I will be honest, it scared me going to listen to them because when I knew kind of what their whole shtick was. However, that album was incredible, heartbreaking.
Oh yeah.
Lament, the moment Come Heroin starts, I got goosebumps on my arms. I was like, okay, I'm ready. And in my opinion,
it's a blue.
Yeah.
Come Heroin.
Like, and then just it's like, it's literally, in my opinion, I think this album is brilliant. I think the instrumentation's great. There's so much great mixture of like simplified songwriting that hits you, like Reminders hook, even though it's not like super basic, it really is kind of like a anthemic, like, I need reminders of the love I had. Like, it's very catchy. But then, like you were saying, like Come Heroin or like the self-titled track, those songs are very aggressive, and Jeremy's songwriting is great. I love the experimentation.
Kind of like with Fleet Foxes, it's like everything you know about them, but maybe just a little more accessible, maybe.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like, this is a more streamlined version of them than on Stage 4 for sure, probably.
No, I agree. I agree 100%. I definitely think Stage 4 kind of had a certain kind of feel lyrically too, whereas there is a lot of dark lyrics, but it's kind of that coming out of the Stage 4 album era. But now, two records that, one I was hoping that was going to be good, and one I have props to give to this person, but I'll go into it. So, As Long As You Are by Future Islands. So I've never fully liked a Future Islands album. I love them. I think what they do is really special, and I get it, it's not everyone's cup of tea. And I think every time they put out a single, like Seasons or Ran, I'm like, God, these songs are so good and catchy. And then the rest of the album comes out, and I'm like, it didn't work for me. And then when this album was coming out, For Sure, I believe, was the first single, I listened to it, and I was like, this is just kind of like Future Islands. I feel like I've heard this song a million times from them. But then Thrill came out, and I was like, this is kind of different for them. I like the slow burn. I don't think it's a perfect album. Like, I don't think it's amazing, but I go back to a lot of the songs on it. I definitely think the second half is very, very, like, re-listenable to me. Like, I think it's some of their best stuff, and I think there is a lot to be said of, I feel like there is sort of I'm trying to think of the word you would call, like a comfort level of like you were saying about all the other records we've been talking about. Like, this is what they do, but then they've done a lot of really new and interesting things on here that I'm like, this is actually a pretty decent body of work. And I was very happy because I've always wanted to like an album of theirs. And then an artist that I have to give all the praise to, a guy that I never liked and has always disappointed me, like my Detroit Lions, who is also from Detroit as well. Big Sean, Detroit too.
Oh man, like this is your folklore for this episode, isn't it?
Josh, I'm gonna tell you something. I have hated Big Sean. I think he is whack. I've thought he is corny. I have thought he is one of the worst rappers in how he was in mainstream. And I always did not want to like him, but him being a hometown guy and how he reps the city, I always thought that was respectful. But I'm like, God, you're not. And then a bunch of my friends, like Montez, was like, dude, like, you need to get on this. And he played Lucky Me for me. And I had to take a moment because I'm like, I was not ready. It's a little long, and I don't think it's absolutely perfect, but he sounds so much more focused. He's not as annoying. Lucky Me is awesome. I love all the little stories he has with like Erica Badu and Dave Chappelle. The Baddest is a great song. The song with
Oh my god,
yeah.
one of the hardest instrumentals I've heard.
Boom, 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 boom. Bishop the Baddest. Boom, boom, boom. It's just, yeah,
God.
it's so catchy.
That song essentially is him trying to be Denzel Curry, and I'm completely okay with that.
I love the song with the late Nipsey Hussle on it. I thought that was great. I do think the middle there was a little bit of kind of like meh stuff, but I thought the posse cut with all like the Detroit underground legends was great with like Sada Baby and all that. That was really cool. But Big Sean, if you somehow come across this, I am sorry, because I think with I Decided, his last album, that was slowly the Dark Sky Paradise, I think, is when he started to try and make that shift. And then I Decided he was refining it more. And I think this album was very refined with what he did. That's my 6. I'm going to throw it to Joshua because there are some I do want to talk about on his list too that I'm excited about.
Oh yeah. So the first one, I'm gonna go to something kind of low key, like I gotta stay on brand and talk about my singer-songwriter music. Uh, Bill Callahan, Gold Record.
Mm-hmm.
Like he is definitely kind of an icon in underground music. He's sort of in a similar vein as like maybe Bill Elverum of like Microphones.
Oh, okay.
Or like Mark Kozalik uh, of Sun Kill Moon fame, and like his musings on like everyday life are kind of plain spoken and just kind of like really out there. And it's interesting. He's a guy that I'm only like just now getting into. In fact, it was really 2019 when I first kind of heard of him, and I decided to give him a listen with this new record. And I have to say that like this is the like beautifully comforting and kind of like very like sweet indie folk that I just needed right now, because it is a crazy year and you kind of need music to slow the blood, even though there definitely is some melancholy on here. But just like he just sounds like the nicest guy you've ever met on this album.
I do, honestly, from your description, obviously he probably doesn't sound like those artists that you brought up, but from like your, like you were saying, that kind of indie underground, like big guys, I love those two guys. So like I'm very interested in hearing him. And so I really want to listen to this record now after we're done.
All right. Next album, I'm gonna delve into some indie country on here and talk about an artist that I actually discussed as an artist I was waiting for a new project from.
That is very true. I forgot.
So Lydia Lovelace, Daughter. This is an album I had extremely high hopes for this thing. This is one of those albums where when I came into it, I was just, God damn, let this album be good.
It finally comes out and you're like, please don't be bad. Please don't be bad.
Great news is it is every bit as good as I wanted it to be. Like, it's definitely my favorite country album of 2020. I'd say, as much as I love her 2016 album, Real, I will say that there was still a little bit of improvement to be made. And I think with this album, she's come through with her most like focused and most fully realized album yet. And she definitely does delve into some pretty dark stuff. She like recently went through a divorce, so that's definitely a pretty
Yeah.
big source of inspiration here. It's kind of interesting. It isn't quite getting the same level of fanfare as Real, and I do know one of my favorite music critics who's a huge Lydia Lovelace fan, Mark Grondin at Spectrum Pulse.
Hmm.
You know, he was kind of one of those people who like loved it, but at the same time kind of was a little bit wanted to love it more than he did.
Yeah.
Yeah, but for me, just like this record absolutely is excellent. It's definitely going to be in my top 10 of the year. Next album, I'm going to completely shift gears here and talk about an artist that I recently discovered from NPR that I never heard of until this year. That definitely one that I highly recommend. And this is, you know, goes in the category of names you probably couldn't even pronounce. Gabriel Garzon Montano. The album is called like Aguita or Aguita,
The
like
album
however.
art, when I was getting all the album art for this, or when you sent me your PowerPoint, I was like, hello, this guy. I was very like, okay, well. It reminded me of Moses Sumney's newest record where he's like his bare butt and he's like laying on the rock.
Yeah, yeah. It is funny. He's like on the same level. He's on like the same label as Moses Sumney.
Oh, is he?
Jaguar.
Oh,
And
okay.
actually has quite a bit in common with that album. You know, the mystical chamber pop arrangements
Oh,
with
wow.
like
Okay.
elements
Interesting.
of R&B and jazz. And then there's like three other songs where he actually goes for this like, you know, like reggaeton trap kind of sound, and you know, he's like using auto-tuned rapping on a few tracks. And and yet those tracks don't stick out like a sore thumb. They actually fit in really well and kind of recontextualize the like a lot of the lyrics on this album, which are kind of about like, you know, relationships and struggling with you know, daily life, like in like feeling lonely or something like that.
Yeah.
Like uh it definitely is the kind of thing. I definitely heard some Frank Ocean kind of worship
Okay.
in there on cuts like With a Smile. Yeah, just yeah, great record. It's one that you know, this is one where you really kind of have to listen because the arrangements are just so like, yeah, they're spellbinding. It's crazy.
Yeah.
It's and while we're on the topic of spellbinding music that you really have to listen to, Sufjan Stevens. Yeah,
Hometown boy, Sufian, let's go.
yeah, yeah. It's like, well, you know, I will say this about Sufjan Stevens. Like, I love his 2015 album Carrie and Lowell like so much. It's
Yes.
like easily one of my favorites of the decade. However, I will say some of the stuff he's done after that album, I've been a little bit disappointed in. From his just kind of tedious Planetarium project, which, you know, is basically an album that suffers from like conceptitis a little bit, where it's such a bold concept, but
Yeah.
yet the music is really not that great.
Honestly, to count off what you said, I think the best thing he's done since Carrie Lowell are the two songs he did for Call Me By Your Name.
This album, I kind of went into it being like, you know, anything could happen.
Yeah.
But upon listening to it, I will say this. In my opinion, this is the best thing he's done since Carrie and Lowell left. Like,
Okay.
it feels like the electronics on this album are like, you know, it's basically the sound that he started working with on Age of Odds,
Yeah.
but like even more intoxicating and beautiful.
In my opinion, I feel like this is his version of like a art pop record. Like I feel like the songwriting feels very like video game. Like video game to me seems like a kind of like I personally could see that on the radio. Like it's kind of like an experimental pop song in my opinion. Like I think that's his version of like avant-garde pop with like the
Which
long songs and all that.
it's the kind of album that I kind of get why this record is a kind of polarizing record.
Yeah.
It is definitely more understated lyrically than just like with Carrie Lowell. The lyrics and what he was dealing with were just there
Well,
in
yeah.
your face. He's definitely doing the art pop thing. I mean, I'm definitely thinking of like Perfume Genius kind of stuff. That's essentially what it is.
Absolutely, yes.
All right. Next album. While we're on the topic of kind of experimental pop music, I'm going to talk about some hyper pop now. Uh, Dorian Electra, My Agenda. This is yet another record where I was just like really so stoked for it because I just love their debut album, Flamboyant, which was just like this very like colorful, catchy, and kind of weird like art pop record that
Mhm.
covered a lot of topics like masculinity and gender politics and stuff like that. This album, I will say that this isn't better than Flamboyant. I think it is a little more flawed and criminally short than Flamboyant was. It still is also their most adventurous album yet. I mean, it's definitely heavier. You can definitely hear more of the like hard rock and heavy metal influences
Yeah.
in here. Definitely very much similar to like maybe Poppy or Rina Sawayama with this kind
Mhm.
of aesthetic.
No, and it's funny because you have this on your list, and I haven't listened to their first record, Flamboyant. I know, again, Anthony's talking about them, and I know they were on the 100 Gex remix record, so I was like,
Yeah.
I'll get to their record at some point. But I saw you put this on your list, and I know Anthony talked about it, so I'm like, you know what? I want to listen to it. I don't think it's bad. I do think it is very good in terms of, again, the topics. I was more into the production. Like when the moment I heard it, I'm like, oh, okay, this is like new Charlie XCX or 100 Gex, which I know 100 Gex or Dylan rather has some production credits on here.
So
And
yeah, like which record are you talking about? Flamboyant or My Agenda?
My Agenda, and like I do agree with you. I was very surprised how short it was too. I was like, wow, this is very straight to the point. I think the record kind of tapers off a bit near the end.
Yeah,
I do think it's great,
sure.
and it definitely will be somewhere on one of my lists because I think, like you said, they're very adventurous and bold with a lot of the stuff they're doing.
I'm gonna switch gears once again. Talk about a couple of hip hop albums. This is another one that I was kind of looking forward to this, but then also at the same time, I was kind of like, well, he is following up his three like really awesome records.
Yeah.
I wonder if he's gonna slip up a little. Thank God he did not. Of course, I am talking about Open Mike Eagle's new album, Anime, Trauma, and Divorce.
Yes, good record.
I wrote this down. This is definitely his most personally sobering album to date. I mean, the title very much says it all. Like
Yes.
he's had a pretty rough patch in his life recently, like divorce and also kind of using anime characters to like identify himself. That's why you got songs like Joestar and Bushiarati. It's funny, like it's definitely a much more straightforward Open Mike Eagle record. It's definitely got it's not quite as maybe absurdist as his older stuff. So I kind of get why someone like Anthony Fantano was just kind of meh on it.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, it is very different because I do like Brick Body Kids,
Yes,
right? Yeah,
great album.
I love that. Was a really good record. I was very impressed by that, and I agree with you where I feel like this record. There's a lot of. It's kind of like the Wizard of Oz thing, where it's like there's the curtain, the man behind the curtain. Where you were saying like with the topic, it's very much just open, and
Yeah.
it is a very different approach, but I still felt it to be quite charming because because I don't know if you agree with this, but the record isn't necessarily depressing. It's more of
Oh,
kind of like yeah, this is what happened, and like it's more of a just kind of an
oh
open
yeah.
dialogue.
It still got plenty of wit and humor, even
Yeah.
though there are moments like the Black Mirror episode. That song scared the hell out of me. It's like, yeah, and mostly because Black Mirror is like one of those shows where I've watched it and I've kind of had a like really physical, like little, really like vocal freak out. And basically, that's Open Mike Eagle is like, oh shit, watching this show ended my marriage Yeah, like yeah, it's like him just basically crying out for help. Uh,
Yeah.
but then you followed it up with moments like "What the fuck is self care," which is just this really kind of like endearing and kind of like sort of very blunt song about him basically trying to recover from his trauma. And while we're on the topic of like traumatic subject matter, but mixed with wit and humor, Homeboy Sandman, Don't Feed the Monster comes next. You've probably heard him on a few like other rap releases, like he's collaborated with Aesop Rock a lot. He's on the Billy Woods Known Unknowns record. Like he and Aesop are on the song Wonderful. And then also he's worked with Quelly Chris quite a bit, who actually produces this record.
Oh,
And,
I
and,
have to listen to this then.
oh yeah, and he does lend a guest verse onto the song "Hello Dancer" as well. Uh, it's like this is a guy that underground hip hop fans definitely pretty much will recognize this artist by name, but he's still kind of underappreciated. I highly recommend checking out maybe Spectrum Pulse's review of his 2019 album Dusty, because he is like the one person to say like, okay, this album is great. You know, why this album isn't getting the acclaim it deserves, I don't know. I'd say this record is kind of similar, like, but I definitely feel like, he still deserves a lot more credit because he really has such skill, like on a song like Trauma, where he's like addressing masculinity in such a clever way. And then there's some like very weird cuts on this thing. There's a song on here called Biters where I have no idea what that song is about still. Like, I explicitly want to know what this song is about. But yeah, it's like so like funny and smart, and like Quelly's beats on this record are like really kind of kooky and very
Yeah.
like weird, and his full on like even singing backup vocals all over this thing. It's crazy. Yeah, yeah. Those are my albums that have been on repeat.
Hey, you plugged the title.
Yeah.
And you know what's actually funny is like, if you guys have been watching the show, we usually kind of go to a break here. And I feel like sometimes it's warranted and unwarranted, but I feel like we're not going to do that this time because I don't want to break the sort of great transition, because we're going to go into a single that each of us are into that for an upcoming project or, whatever. And you brought up Aesop Rock. And I think that was a great transition into your single.
Oh yeah, because considering I talk about like, both Open Mike Eagle and Homeboy Sandman have actually worked with Aesop. If you follow underground hip hop, you probably know him as one of the most interesting poets out
Yes,
there.
absolutely.
I mean, he is the William Shakespeare of hip hop all the way. Like,
I agree. Yes.
yes. Of course, this is teasing for a new record called Spirit World Field Guide, and obviously the song is called The Gates. And it's definitely very much Aesop. The wordplay is like crazy, and also the beat is kind of like lo-fi, and it sounds like something out of like an '80s like horror game or something like that, because it's kind of spooky and stuff like that. And I think that kind of sound is like perfect for Aesop's delivery. If I do have any sort of critique about the song, it's like I'm still kind of trying to figure out what the song's about, and that's the kind of thing with Aesop Rock. Is like
decoding it.
He's an acquired taste. Like there's like, I've listened to Labor Days like twice recently, and I'm still trying to process what these songs are about, even after seeing Spectrum Pulse's Resonators review of that album. I guess I will be able to, figure it out like maybe once the election results are in or something, and also he has this other track that I still have to listen to that's teasing for it called Pizza Alley. Yeah, but yeah, just like I love Aesop, and it likely wouldn't surprise you.
Good artist to bring up.
All right, yeah, Brian, what's your single that you wanted to talk about?
My single I wanted to talk about, great transition. My single is from a band that I've known of. I'll be honest, I really didn't get into them until their album last year, Amo. And I just learned that they just put out an EP with these 2 songs, and I didn't even freaking realize it. So yes, I will listen to it after this. But it is Teardrops / Parasite Eve from Bring Me the Horizon. Teardrops just came out. Parasite Eve's been out for a while. I just haven't heard it. It's been on the radio a lot here. From what I've been hearing from this EP, it's very much when Doom Eternal came out earlier this year. They were like, hey, we want to make kind of an album with like kind of that horror, like heavy metal sound, like old school video game thing like Doom. And Parasite Eve like has that kind of eeriness, and it has like that kind of really good like Bring Me the Horizon like build. The vocals are great, and then Teardrops I think is another really good like well-written song. I'm just excited now that there's an EP because I didn't know if this was for an album, but clearly with the the pandemic and all that, like people are doing a lot more music or trying to, and so I am excited to listen to this EP because I hear it's very just horror eccentric, I guess.
Yeah, it's like we just had Halloween, like it's perfect for that.
Yeah, for sure. No, I agree, and it's funny because speaking of Halloween, I have a surprise one. This is not one that you were anticipating. There's a rapper that I know. I don't know if you're going to get the joke. There's a rapper that I know very personally. He goes by the name of B Sleazy, and he has 2 new songs out called Intestinal Testimony and Too Spoopy. And what are you talking? That's me. I'm B Sleazy. Yes, on my Us and Our Friends channel. I put out 2 songs in the past couple weeks. And we put out a song on Halloween called Too Spoopy, and the whole song is my friend Montez and I wrote a whole song based on Halloween. I guess in a way I'm kind of suggesting this to Joshua because I had a really bad stunt where I said B Sleazy passed away, and I had a bunch of people messaging me saying that they thought I was dead.
Yeah.
Wasn't. I'm alive. I'm
yeah,
okay. If you go look up youtube.com/Us and Our Friends, we have 3 songs, Flaming Hot, and then the newer songs, Intestinal Testimony, and then Too Spoopy. I hope you guys enjoy them. I think they're a lot of fun. But yes, Josh, I had to find a way to hoe out my other channel. So I just thought it was perfect. And you said it with Halloween and music. So anyways, that aside, we will now go into the final part, which is artists that we are very interested in learning about if they're going to be coming out with anything. This is an artist that I actually just learned that she put out 2 songs like late last year, and I was like, what? So I have to go get a listen to them. But I'm about to screw it up. I just researched it before, but Xenia?
Yeah, Xenia Rubino.
Xenia. I went way too over the top. I was like, Xenia. Xenia Rubinos.
I'm like very excited you're going to talk about this because, Black Terry Cat is one of my favorite albums of 2016. I mean, I just love like, still to this day, I get so like energized when I hear that hook on Mexican Chef.
Mexican Chef is one of the best singles that year, but it's funny that you say that because I'm going to be honest. I didn't really love that record.
Yeah.
I was very on the fence with it. I was very 50-50. However, her name came up recently because I'm like, we haven't heard from her in a while. And even though I didn't love the record, she reminded me of who was the artist?
Leanne La Havas.
Leanne. That's who I thought. I thought it was Leanne La Havas. She reminds me a lot of her where like she has this really interesting blend of like R&B, pop, soul, but like dance music and like does other really quirky things. And she just has a great voice and great personality. And like, that's what I took from the album. I don't love it, but I could tell she's very creative. And the stuff I liked on that record, like I was saying, Mexican Chef is like, boom, 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 boom. Like it's so infectious and gets you on a move. Like
and it's also kind of punky as well. Yeah.
Oh, for sure. Like I definitely feel like she is an artist that I feel like I would love to hear from her now. And again, she does have 2 songs that came out like later last year. But maybe she'll have an album in the works or she's maybe putting something together. I don't know. But I'd be interested to hear from her again. That was my artist. So Josh, who's your artist?
So, I'm gonna go back to we've talked about like Touche Amore and Knuckle Puck, like yeah, we've definitely have been doubling down on the emo this episode. So I'm gonna, talk about yet another emo band, the Hotelier, which is definitely kind of a leading name, kind of in the current emo revival. I mean, right up there with like Sorority Noise or like The World Is a Beautiful Place
Oh, okay.
and Modern Baseball. Like,
Oh, cool.
man, it's interesting. In 2020, even before coronavirus began, like had a I was kind of, made a little plan to sort of go back to the 2010s and sort of catch up on albums I've been curious about. And I went and listened to this band's 2014 album, Home Like No Place Is There. And I can definitely see what all the acclaim is about. Such a great record. I mean, it's sort of like Knuckle Puck, whereas, it's not very inventive punk and emo music, but
Yeah.
like, the songwriter just like has such a great talent, and he actually can sing really well, even though there are times where, his vocals can be a little bit wimpy. But like, still, like, even then, he is just so powerful. It's definitely a strong contender for like my favorite emo album of the 2010s. Their last release was 2016's Goodness, which that was actually kind of my first taste of the band. And I admit, like, when I initially heard it, I liked it. I wasn't quite in love with it, but
Mhm.
like after checking out their like home record and just loving it, like I decided to kind of revisit this album, see how it held up. And I will say it's definitely that album has very much grown on me. Like, I don't think it's better than Home. It's certainly a bit of a step down, but it definitely still nonetheless is the Hotelier, and just what essentially it's what you kind of know from the band, just kind of slightly more streamlined and kind of a little less depressing than its predecessor. But yeah, but for some reason they haven't put out music in a little while, and I'm kind of like, well, yeah, like it's been 4 years, guys. Like, what the
Come
hell?
on.
Come on, like, you know.
Because that's what artists love, is when people push them to try and put out music.
Yeah. Then again, there are other people kind of on their level, like Pup, that are still like going strong to this day. And yeah, like that Pup album from last year, just that thing still smacks. Like,
It does. Especially their new EP. You guys should give that a listen too.
oh
Oh,
yeah, I haven't heard that yet, but I love how it's called This
this
Place
place
Sucks.
sucks ass. That's
Like,
true. And you
and
know what? On that note, I think that's a perfect way to end this episode of What's on Repeat, is with you and I in unison saying, this place sucks ass. Thank you guys so much again. We love doing this. It's so much fun. If you've listened or agreed with either of our lists, leave them in the comments below, or whatever things you've been listening to. And again, hopefully we're going to figure out what the final episode of the year is. Maybe we'll do it early in December, or maybe we'll do like kind of like maybe we might do it at the end of the year. We don't know. We're going to figure it out. Hopefully, everything the world is not on fire after the election. So
yeah.
we'll find out. So
Yeah.
thank you guys so much for watching. Take it easy and peace out. The whole ending just screwed up. Bye.
Yeah.